Today I would like to talk about ladder company operations, or as it has become known as truck duties. This, like other topics we have discussed before, is very important for a good fire officer to understand. Many people have described truck duties as more of a support role on the fire ground. I take a slightly different approach. I look at fire ground operations like a finely tuned football team, where everyone has a role to play. Some run pumps, while others throw ladders and vent upper floor windows. They're both important and need to be done. Not everyone can hold the nozzle, just like not everyone can be the quarterback. Let's examine some of the main tasks the ladder company will carry out. I like to use the acronym LOVERS U, standing for laddering, overhaul, ventilation, forcible entry, rescue and search, salvage, and control of utilities. Regardless of your staffing levels, a good plan of action is necessary to ensure successful extinguishment of any fire. This plan does many things for you. First, it helps all the members of your team to think uniformly, forcing crew members to consider in advance what must be done. Putting that plan on paper and passing it out for all to read and study makes sure that everyone knows what is going to happen and who is going to do which task. This also helps to establish a line of responsibility from the officer down to the probie. I know we cannot account for all the variables and every possible course of action before we get to any given fire scene. But take it from me, it makes life a lot easier if you show up at the incident with a general idea of what you're going to do. Naturally, that operational plan is going to be quite general, but it should contain some of the following: the number of people to be committed to each of the major areas of responsibility, the tool needs for each area, and the general duties involved. From past experience, we know that we will need the following three basic tools at almost any structure fire. They are, first, a forcible entry tool like a Halligan. Second would be a flathead axe for striking power. And third, a hook or pike pole for opening walls and pulling ceilings. By assigning these tools in advance, you will ensure that the right tools arrive where and when you need them. You will also avoid duplication of effort and needless wasted time. Of course, your plan should be realistic. If you only expect 4 crew members, don't assign tools for 14. In fact, it will take 2 crew members just to hold the tools for many operations. For less hazardous operations like performing ventilation outside the fire area, a single member may be assigned. But make sure that they are paired up for accountability and tracking purposes with someone else working the nearby area. For instance, if you have a 3-member truck company, the interior or forcible entry team must be 2 members at least. The ladder unit chauffeur should be expected to do more than just bring the rig to the scene, yet he shouldn't be used as an extra body inside. He can be used for perimeter actions around the structure, but he must stay in communications with command. Of course, always comply with OSHA's 2 in and 2 out requirements when operating in any immediately dangerous to life and health atmosphere, also known as an IDLH. This buddy system must be used unless human life at risk demands immediate action to save that life. And if any member is assigned to work alone, make sure that they have the necessary training and experience for the task at hand. Also, I cannot stress enough the importance of having a radio available for that member, even if they are operating near the pump operator. Speaking of the pump operator, understanding and respecting the job tasks of both truck and engine companies will help you, as the incident commander, to create a cohesive fire ground operation. If you help your crew understand what the other guy goes through, that will provide incentive for them to get the job done as quickly, thoroughly, and safely as possible. At the same time, a member of the ladder company may have little or no idea how vital his tasks are for the interior crews, unless he's experienced the benefits of his actions on the inside, when it's really ripe. No matter what apparatus arrives at the fire scene first, certain actions need to take place. As I've discussed in my earlier DVD presentations, you need to locate, confine, and then extinguish the fire. The truck company is often the first one to locate the seat of the fire. So before you commit any hose line to any location, find the fire. Let's now take a look at an actual plan of action and see how it works in real structures, and then consider how it might be adapted for use in almost any situation. The first thing that we need to take into consideration is the total number of personnel that would be part of the action plan. At very large structures, there might be assigned positions for more than 25 truck personnel. If, however, the total number that will respond is only 8, there's no sense in planning for 25. The idea is to outline the responsibilities and activities of the initial responding units at the most common type of structural fire, then make that plan flexible enough to handle all the rest of the buildings in your area. Sometimes, certain buildings and occupancies will pose an unusual situation, which will require a change in tactics. This should be the exception to the rule, and these buildings, with their specific tactics, should be well known within the department. A good example of a ladder company operations guide would be the FDNY's Tactics Bulletin, previously known as Ladders 4. Its official name is Firefighting Procedures, Volume 1, Book 6, Private Dwellings, but this grumpy old retired chief still calls it Ladders 4. This bulletin covers all the operational duties of a ladder company while working a 1 or 2 family house fire. Since that is the predominant fire throughout the United States, it is what we will discuss here. For more than 140 years, the FDNY has responded to many thousands of fires of almost every type. Through evaluating mistakes and the experience of the most senior members, the FDNY has been able to develop standard operating procedures for most structures that they encounter. When most people think of New York City, they correctly think of high-rises, which are real problems when it comes to fires. But there are 4 other boroughs in New York City, and these contain tens of thousands of 1 and 2 family homes. Those are the proving grounds for Ladders 4. The ladder company operations in this plan are based on a 6-person crew, 1 officer and 5 firefighters. The officer does very little physical duties, but acts like an orchestra conductor, leading the team to make sure that the operations go smoothly and safely. This plan assumes that there is a working fire in an occupied private house. An engine will arrive, and the initial 6-man truck crew will be augmented by a 6-man truck crew later on into the operations. It places the greatest importance on saving human life. Regardless of the time of day, you cannot assume that there is no one inside. Time is of the essence, and we need to have a well-organized game plan in order to save the greatest number of victims. We need to realize that most victims in a fire try to escape through their normal path of egress. This means an interior search team is an absolute must. That team needs the tools and equipment to perform forcible entry for the advancing hose line, vent as they go, and report their progress to the IC. In Ladders 4, the interior search team consists of 3 members, an officer and 2 firefighters. They carry a flathead axe, a Halligan tool for forcible entry, a hook or pike pole, and a 2.5-gallon water extinguisher to knock down any incipient fires. The officer carries a powerful hand light and a small hand tool. All members have a portable radio. By providing strong leadership at this position, the officer can have a great influence on the outcome of the search. The primary duty of the interior search team is to search the immediate fire area and the means of egress. They also provide the needed forcible entry, venting, and the opening up of any blind spaces for the advancing hose line. There are 3 other members in this 6-person ladder company. They are split into 2 teams. The chauffeur and 1 member work together at the rear of the structure, placing a portable ladder to gain access to the second-floor bedrooms for search and ventilation. This leaves 1 crew member to work alone. This is usually not a good idea, but if they're assigned specific locations and tasks, the risks can be minimized. This member is known as the roof man and usually works at the front of the structure, performing vent, enter, and search operations, or VES. By assigning this member to the front of the house, they put him where he is more easily seen and assisted. The FDNY took many factors into consideration when they developed this plan of action. They created a list of priorities based on each member's assignments. The interior team is the largest team and has the leadership of the officer directly available. This is logical, since the primary duty of the officer is to protect the crew members. Also, the interior team faces the most dangerous environment. Conducting search and rescue operations under the high heat and smoke conditions is a formidable task, and therefore needs the most personnel. When searching, send your crews to the exit paths and the bedrooms. These areas are the high-priority search locations because those are the areas where victims will most likely be found. In fact, statistics nationwide show that the area of highest life hazard, regardless of the time of day, is the bedroom. These exterior search teams enter the bedrooms by laddering directly to the window or by staging from a porch roof below. This gives the search teams direct access to the area with the highest life hazard. They can conduct their VES operations and know that if the fire situation starts to get worse, the ladder or porch roof is there for a quick exit. This plan also dictates tool assignments based on the tasks at hand for each crew member. For the outside team, the chauffeur provides an axe, while his partner brings a hook and a Halligan tool. This provides the needed tools to force doors as well as to vent when needed. The roof man carries a hook and a Halligan for prying. Take note that this plan has not mentioned anything about roof ventilation. Again, the priority of any firefighter is to protect human life. At peaked roof houses, roof ventilation takes a lower priority because it usually does not contribute to saving or protecting the life hazard. If it is needed, it can be assigned to any additional personnel, probably the second ladder company. You might be thinking to yourself right now, that's great for the FDNY that shows up at every incident with a fleet of ladder trucks, but it won't work here where we have staffing issues. I say, hold on a minute. Let's look at the important points of this plan. The first is the interior team. A minimum 2-person crew enters the fire building and must begin search operations and assist the interior attack team. The second point is that roof venting isn't initially required, but horizontal venting that helps speed the advancing hose line is required. Third, by properly selecting a window for entry, you have a very good chance of finding any missing occupants. Instead of 6 members, this tactic can be used with almost any number. Of course, with fewer crew members, the tasks will take longer, but the chances of success are still multiplied compared to a strictly interior operation. Now you might be asking, what position should I assign, and what tools should the members carry? The answer is that the positions must cover the most vital areas first, providing all the needed tools to that area before people are assigned to other areas. The plan we just discussed is designed for 1 and 2 family houses. It should be modified for use in other structures. In fact, these modifications are often best determined at the local level, based on conditions observed in the field beforehand. Again, devise a plan that will put the needed personnel, armed with the right tools, at the location where they are needed most. Now remember, we are talking about the acronym Lover's U. Some of the timing and priorities may change depending on the situation at hand. For example, salvage operations at a vacant building takes a lower priority compared to salvage at an art gallery fire. And obviously, search and rescue will usually be the first priority. But even that may be changed if you arrive on the scene to see fire shooting out of the cracks in between the bricks and collapse is imminent. Portable ladders have many uses, and as a good fire officer, you need to know those uses and when to employ them. Some of those uses are providing access, rescue routes, escape routes, and ventilation points, to name a few. They can take the place of aerial devices where access is limited. The proper placement and use of a ladder in the early stages of a fire can many times save a life, cut off fire extension, and in general make the tasks of a firefighter easier. All crew members, whether they come from the engine, the ladder, or the rescue unit, need to be familiar with their complement of ladders and how to use them. Here are the factors that affect the selection and placement of a portable ladder: reach or length, weight, nested or stored length, material of construction, and the number of personnel that are needed to place it into operation. The single most important factor in selecting a ladder is its length. The strongest, lightest, and safest ladder is useless if it cannot reach the objective. Many departments get lulled into thinking that because they have aerial units, they can get rid of their 45 and 55-foot ladders. You never know when you might be trapped in a room and need rescue when an aerial device is not available. I know these larger ladders take 5 or 6 guys to place, but in an emergency, something is better than nothing. At the same time, your ladder complement should be consistent with the conditions you will find in your first response area. I've seen ladder trucks carrying 2 45 and 2 35-foot ladders, as well as 12, 14, and 28-foot straight ladders, well surpassing the NFPA requirement for 168 feet of ground ladders, yet those ladders were totally unsuitable for their own first response area, which was exclusively 1 and 2-story houses. A better mix would include 35-foot extensions, which replaced the 28-footer, and 24-foot extensions, since these ladders will provide full height coverage from the second floor to the roof of a 3-story home. This ability to adjust to various lengths is a major plus for the extension ladder. Less experienced firefighters, when using extension ladders, are more likely to select the proper length to do the job. Selecting the proper length for the job at hand is more complicated than it may seem. As a rule of thumb, residential buildings can be estimated as 9 feet from floor to floor. Increase this estimate to 12 feet from floor to floor in commercial buildings. Add to this an average windowsill height of 3 feet above the floor, plus a window height of 4 feet to reach your final estimate. Here you can see that a quick size up of the structure, you should be able to calculate that the second floor windowsill is 12 feet above grade, while the third floor windowsill would be about 21 feet above grade. This is a good start to determining the proper length of the ladder, but it is not everything. The intended use of the ladder should also be considered. If the task is search and rescue, a shorter ladder may suffice than if ventilation or overhaul of the exterior is to be performed. Now I want to discuss the proper climbing angle associated with laddering. In general, the proper climbing angle for a portable ladder is about 70 degrees. This allows the climber to walk nearly erect while holding onto the rungs. This angle eats into the vertical reach of the ladder. Therefore, a 12-foot ladder does not reach a 12-foot windowsill. In fact, at a 70-degree angle, 6% of a ladder's total height is lost to this factor. The remaining 94% is called the working length, the height that a ladder will actually reach above grade. So to reach a 12-foot windowsill, the ladder will need to have at least 13 feet of reach. Next, let's examine proper tip placement of the ladder. Like selecting the length of the ladder, the tip placement is also determined by its intended use. If a firefighter is to vent a window by breaking it, the best position of the tip of the ladder is even with the top of the window frame, just off to the upwind side of the objective. The crew member is able to climb to a height which allows the window to be broken without being in the path of falling glass. Be careful not to ascend too high, because as the window is being vented, heat, smoke, and possibly fire will escape and may envelop the crew member. For most all other uses, the portable ladder tip should be placed just at or below the windowsill. Let's look at entering and exiting a window. By placing the tip just at or below the windowsill, the entire opening of the window is left unobstructed for entry and exit. Another advantage to placing the tip just at or below the windowsill is that it keeps the firefighter that is entering and exiting away from the higher parts of the room, which are the hottest and most dangerous. Also, if the ladder is going to be used as an emergency exit, having the tip below the windowsill is the only way the escaping firefighter will be able to get onto the ladder. 2 crew members can handle a 35-foot aluminum extension ladder if they butt it against the building while they raise it. One of the drawbacks to using aluminum ladders is the fact that they conduct electricity. Many firefighters have been injured or electrocuted while working near live electrical wires on aluminum ladders. Composite or fiberglass ladders with aluminum rungs have been introduced and have helped cut down on those type of injuries. They're just starting to become popular in the fire service, even though electric companies have been using them for many years now. Don't forget, however, it doesn't matter what material the ladder is made of. Water conducts electricity well, so any ladder coated in water can be dangerous near live wires. Be careful. Another drawback to aluminum as well as fiberglass ladders is their lack of resistance to heat. In fact, aluminum ladders go through a heat treating process when manufactured, and when exposed to additional heat, they lose integrity very quickly. Also, this weakening effect may not produce any outward change in the shape of the ladder. The only other evidence of possible high heat exposure may be a subtle discoloration of the metal. If you suspect that a ladder has been exposed to high heat or direct flame, take the ladder out of service so that it can be inspected. NFPA Standard 1932 states that each section of new fiberglass and aluminum ladders needs to have a heat sensing label attached to them. When the temperature of the ladder reaches about 300 degrees, the label will change color, indicating that it needs to be taken out of service for inspection. NFPA 1932 also deals with the working load of the ladder. The working load or weight capacity of modern ladders is mandated to be 750 pounds. That reflects 250 pounds each for 3 people. Basically, it accounts for 2 firefighters and 1 victim, along with all their PPE and SCBA. Another section of NFPA 1932 requires all ladder sections to be at least 16 inches wide at the narrowest part. This is great for increased stability as well as improved clearance for traversing with full protective gear. As with any tool, failure to use a ladder properly can lead to injury or death. As a good fire officer, it is imperative that you know and teach your crews how ladders work, their capacities, and proper usages. In training scenarios, keep the situations as real as possible. That means that all personnel climb with full PPE along with all the standard tools for the fireground operations. Be careful not to overload ladders in training, though. Some departments feel the need to push ladders to their maximum abilities to show recruits and others their capabilities. It's good to trust your equipment, but don't overdo it in training just for a demonstration. Now let's look at some guidelines for the safe use of ladders. 1. Use the proper length and type of ladder. Don't attempt to improvise except to save a life. Just go back and get the proper ladder. 2. Use the ladder at the proper angle. If the angle is too steep, the climber risks pulling away from the building. If the angle is too shallow, climbing is more awkward and risk of overstressing the ladder increases as well. 3. Position a ladder according to the objective at hand. Avoid shifting the ladder once it is in place, but don't try to make do with an improperly placed ladder. If you need to move the ladder, just do it. Remember, always retract extension ladders before you move them. 4. Keep all ladders away from electrical lines. I can't stress this enough. Be aware of electrical lines when you are carrying, placing, and climbing the ladder. If you have to move it in the vertical position, if only for short distances, by the way, make sure that someone has an eye on the tip at all times. 5. Do not place ladders directly in front of ingress or egress routes, or where fire is likely to vent. Move ladders away from well-involved rooms, preferably to the upwind side if possible. 6. Do not overload the ladder. Remember, they are only rated for 750 pounds, except for folding and attic ladders, which are even lower. 7. When climbing the ladder, always have one hand on the ladder at all times. I know you need to carry tools, but always leave one hand free for safe climbing. You can sling power tools over your shoulder or use a light rope and haul the equipment up. If you do need to climb a ladder with a tool, place both hands on the beam. Position the hand carrying the tool with the wrist cocked behind the beam. 8. When working on a ladder, always use ladder locks or a ladder belt to secure yourself. Nobody plans to fall off a ladder, but it happens more than you realize. 9. Don't overextend or overreach from a ladder. Overextending your horizontal reach can force the ladder out from under you, taking the person who is footing the ladder by surprise. Again, if you have to move the ladder, do it. 10. Tie off or secure the ladder if possible. Sometimes this is just not practical, but if you can, try to anchor the ladder to something substantial. In fact, if you have to leave a ladder unattended, securing the tip is usually the best option. 11. Before stepping off any ladder, check for the integrity and stability of the area you are about to enter. Use a tool to probe for potential weaknesses, even if visibility is good. Portable ladders are a very useful tool, and when used with forethought, they may be the key to success for an entire operation. Sometimes you may not need an entire ladder truck, but what you have on a pumper can suffice. As a good fire officer, you need to be able to choose the proper length and type of ladder, and be able to lead and perform these duties under duress. So far, we've discussed laddering and the various operational considerations with portable laddering. With laddering, there is an additional device that will help to add to your unit's capabilities, and that is the aerial apparatus. These units are very versatile and can be a real lifesaver on the fire ground, but they should not be viewed as a replacement for portable ladders. Aerial devices are usually used for search, rescue, ventilation, access to the roof, applying master streams, overhauling, and as an observation post with a platform. Certain devices are better suited for certain tasks. The aerial ladder is good for venting windows on the front of a building, while rescuing an unconscious victim is better accomplished with an elevating platform. Reinforcing a roof ventilation team at large building incidents is usually best performed by an aerial ladder or ladder tower instead of an articulating boom, otherwise known as a snorkel, or even a tower ladder. What's the difference between a ladder tower and a tower ladder, you ask? The tower ladder is a platform attached to a boom with a built-in waterway provided and a sideless escape ladder. This ladder is unsuitable for routine climbing because of the lack of substantial sides. The ladder tower is a platform attached to the end of an aerial ladder, also with a built-in waterway. This device is built around an aerial ladder, so it's excellent for everyday climbing operations. This type of device may be a good choice for areas that have large structures and the funds for only one device. As you will see, it is still better to have two aerial devices respond to fires in larger structures. One should be an aerial ladder and the other a platform, making available to the IC the best attributes of both. A note about ladder towers. They typically have lower, platform weight capacities than tower ladders, and many have major restrictions on how to operate the master streams at lower ladder angles. Always be sure to follow the manufacturer's recommendations regarding this and any other restrictions. Serious injury or even death can occur if these restrictions are not followed. Tower ladders, on the other hand, have no restrictions on master stream operations at any angle or extension. That makes them the most versatile master stream on the fireground. Their platform capacity of 1,000 pounds is also unaffected by boom angle, extension, or even master stream use. As a good fire officer, you need to be able to train your crews to position the apparatus properly. You need to consider what type of apparatus is available and the task that is to be performed. Area ladders and telescoping platforms both require a clear line of sight from the turntable to the objective. Articulating boom platforms may be able to reach over obstacles, but that should only be performed with extreme caution, with the understanding that the boom elbow projects opposite the platform, possibly hitting objects on the other side of the truck. When raising an area ladder to the roof, the ladder should extend at least 5 rungs above the level of the roof. This allows for greater visibility of the ladder to be used as an escape route if conditions on the roof deteriorate. The 5 rungs above the roof also allows for safer dismounting and mounting of the ladder by the crew. Also, be aware not to rest the ladder directly on the building itself. It should be out at least an inch or two from the building. This allows the area ladder to perform as designed, and you don't add any undue stress to the building structure. The weight of the crews entering and exiting the ladder will allow the ladder beams to just rest on the building edge. Make sure the angle of the ladder is directly square to the building. If the ladder is not placed square to the building, as a crew member nears the tip of the ladder, one beam will contact the roof first and cause a dangerous twisting force in the ladder. I almost suffered a severe fall when an impatient chauffeur set up the area ladder at an angle on a 6-story school fire. I can't stress enough, position the apparatus so that the turntable is in line with the objective, and then swing the ladder until it is perpendicular to the building. This brings us to the scrub area. This is the surface area of the structure that is physically within range of any aerial device. Area ladders and telescoping booms have better scrub areas than articulating booms of similar length. Basically, the greater the working height of a device, the greater the scrub area will be. The scrub area will show how wide and how high an apparatus can cover for access, egress, and master stream applications. Again, positioning of the ladder will greatly impact the amount of scrub area. If you place the aerial device too close or too far away, the potential scrub area decreases dramatically. It is vital that the chauffeur can find the perfect distance for the apparatus every time. The scrub area is determined by the length of the device and the number of telescoping sections on the rig. So a 4-section, 75-foot boom has a better scrub area than a 3-section boom of the same length. In fact, the 4-section, 75-foot boom has a better scrub area on lower floors than a 3-section, 85-foot boom. For articulating booms, scrub areas and spotting distances are determined by the length of the bed section. Chauffeurs need to be able to judge this spotting distance so as to get the most out of the aerial units. As the incident commander, you need to be able to understand these concepts to maximize unit placement on the fireground, as well as train others. You should conduct real-life training evolutions that include all aspects of aerial device operations at real structures throughout your response area. When positioning midship-mounted devices, place the apparatus just slightly off parallel to the objective. With a 15 to 20 degree angle away from the building, the cab will not get in the way if the aerial or boom is needed on the lower floors. For rear-mounted rigs, backing the apparatus in gives the greatest amount of scrub area, but it's usually not practical due to fireground parking congestion and time constraints. Also, make sure you spot the rig in a position that anticipates potential spread and extension of the fire. A good standard operating procedure would be to have the rig positioned just past the corner of the building as they approach, as long as there are no immediate life hazards. This way, the apparatus can be driven forward if conditions change. If you're positioning to get access over the fire, try to stay upwind to avoid the heat and smoke. Now I want to discuss overhaul. This is the O in Lover's U. Overhaul serves many purposes. A well-done overhaul is good for public relations and makes sure that all the fire is out. A poor overhaul job can be embarrassing, waste manpower, and may even result in the dreaded R word, rekindle. So what is overhaul? What is the difference between a good job and a poor one? And how much overhaul needs to be done? Overhaul in a general sense is any action taken to expose hidden fire and ensure its extinguishment. This is to ensure that once we leave the scene, the fire doesn't rekindle and start again. As the incident commander, don't hesitate to order the proper overhaul, even if you have to add a minor amount of damage to the structure. Overhaul is performed in two stages, pre-control and post-control. Pre-control is just that, overhaul that is done before the fire is under control. This is when the fire still has the upper hand, and the firefighters are opening up voids to stop the spread of the fire. Understanding the construction of the building will greatly help the overhaul operations. In almost all non-fireproof buildings, once fire has heavily involved a kitchen or a bathroom, examine the floor above, because the pipe chases will give a quick path for the fire to travel through. Another favorite place for fire to hide in is the older brick and joist buildings that are built around a skeleton of I-beams, otherwise known as channel rails. The framing around these steel I-beams is usually made of combustible wood lath. When fire gets into these voids, it's usually harder to detect than a fire in a pipe chase. You need to check for these voids very early, as they are literally highways for the expansion of fire. After checking the vertical voids, move on to horizontal voids, such as cocklofts. Though the fire does not move as quickly through horizontal voids as it does in vertical voids, these must still be checked as soon as possible. It used to be common to find horizontal voids only on the floor directly below the roof. This is no longer true due to new construction practices. The next location that must be examined for fire penetration is the floor directly over the fire. Look for any poke-throughs, like radiator pipes that can facilitate fire extension to the floor above. Again, understanding the construction and layout of the building you're operating in can give you a great advantage in knowing where possible voids are. Post-control overhaul is less hurried and consists of a more detailed examination, looking for the smallest amount of fire that might still be smoldering. This time, the openings can be made in a more thorough manner, paying attention not to create unnecessary damage. Openings made at this stage should be justifiable to both the firefighter and the building owner. One tool that can greatly assist you in various parts of your fireground operations, including overhaul, is the thermal imaging camera, or TIC. These devices are probably the best invention for overhaul since the introduction of the Halligan tool. The TIC gives the firefighter a great view of where the heat still lies in a structure. These devices are also great for searching for victims, as well as rooting out the hot spots in a building. When first introduced, TICs were very expensive, and many departments could not afford them. Like most technology, though, these units have become more affordable, and some states are even allocating funds to make sure that every department in the state has at least one TIC unit. I applaud those efforts. Hearing should be the next sense to be used by firefighters to know where to open up for overhaul. If firefighters crawl into a smoke-filled area and don't see any fire, but hear the telltale sign of snap, crackle, and pop, this can be used as a homing device to find the fire. A word of caution here. Just because there's no open flame does not mean the fire cannot intensify at any moment. The sounds of combustion without flame means that a slight opening in the wall or a ceiling may be just what the fire needs to erupt again. When you encounter these situations, have a charged hose line ready at all times. If the firefighter does not have a TIC and there is no sound to help lead the team to the heat source, touch can be used. This is tricky and requires experience and a good dose of caution. Skin begins to burn at about 120 degrees, while Class A material can smolder at close to 400 degrees. That's a big difference, so be very careful when attempting to touch anything on the fire ground. When considering whether to open up any wall or surface, use the 15-second and 2-minute rule. If there are no other outward signs of fire, the firefighter takes an ungloved hand and places it lightly on the surface in question. If he can leave his hand on the surface for 15 to 20 seconds without any undue discomfort, he may not want to open up there. 2 minutes later, he performs the same test. If the heat level has stayed the same or has increased, he should probably take action and open up the wall or surface. If the area has cooled after the 2-minute interval, then it is most likely safe to move on to another area without opening up that surface. Smell is the fourth and least used sense in detecting the need for overhaul. The problem here is that during overhaul, carbon monoxide levels are at their highest. This requires the overhaul crews to wear their SCBA, so having a chance to actually smell something will be minimized. Only after the building has been fully ventilated and there is not an IDLH atmosphere can a sense of smell be of any use in distinguishing between smoke and steam. The final sense that a firefighter has to assist in overhauling is common sense. It's your sworn duty to protect life and property. By using all the experience and knowledge that is gained on the job, a firefighter begins to learn to open things that just don't look right. This is hard to teach and comes from good hard work at many fires. When in doubt, open up. Don't assume that there is no fire. Next, let's talk about the operational considerations of actually opening up walls and surfaces during overhaul. If the fire was localized, like a mattress fire, opening up can be confined to the immediate area. It is important for you to understand the difference between smoke and soot stains and actual char. Objects that are charred should be doused with water and opened up. In fact, with a mattress or stuffed furniture fire, overhaul can better be done outside to eliminate the possibility of rekindling later on. Fire hides easily inside these type of surfaces, so make sure you open them up well and douse them thoroughly. The next ladder duty in Lover's U is salvage operations. Salvage is a very broad topic that encompasses nearly every action taken on the fire ground by both the engine and the ladder companies to reduce the damage from all perils: fire, smoke, water damage, extinguishment, and even the weather. Salvage begins on arrival. Keep in mind the saying, "Try before you pry." This will help prevent unnecessary damage to doors and other structures. A little education on protecting property can go a long way with salvage operations and public relations. Before you leave the premises, make sure that the building does not pose any further danger to the public, and the owner, their representative, or police are on the scene. Make them aware of any major damage so they can begin repairs. Also, if there was roof ventilation performed, make sure they're aware of it so that any possible weather does not add to the damage. We are coming to the end of Lover's U with control of utilities. Shutting down the sprinkler systems and other utilities are part of the ladder company duties, and logically so. Ladder company personnel have the entry tools and usually a portable radio, which aids in activation and shutdown of sprinklers and other utilities. This is especially important in the sprinkler operations, so that a member with a radio can be stationed at the control valve in order to start or stop the system depending on the fire conditions at the time. Proper procedures involve sending a two-person team to shut down the utilities. Again, they may need to force a door to get to any utility control, so make sure they bring all the tools they need for forcible entry actions. We use the buddy system here. Just because the door to the utility closet was open doesn't mean you can send one member. Many times, utility connections are in remote areas of the building, and sending in just one person is never a good idea. If the team is sent to a cellar, make sure they have their SCBA on and are using it. Firefighters have been seriously injured, and some have died from not taking this advice seriously, even though the fire was 2 stories up in a cock loft. I've seen firefighters seriously hurt by this. Wear your protective gear. When actually shutting down the utilities, it's important for the crew members to be familiar with the basic mechanics of the operation. If possible, send someone with relevant experience or expertise. Many firefighters have backgrounds in plumbing and electrical work. A good fire officer knows his teams and their capabilities. Use them wisely. Electricity can pose a huge danger for firefighters working on the fire ground. Sometimes you'll need to wait for the utility company to arrive to assist before your crews can proceed with fire suppression. Always assume that all wires are live and potentially deadly. A very capable fire officer told me about a time that he and his whole crew were almost killed by electricity. They responded to a fire in the transformer room in the basement of a large hotel. After making sure there were no PCBs present, they went in with dry chemical extinguishers. The fire kept lighting up, fed by a live wire coming off a bus bar on the wall. They saw a knife switch on the wall and thought that if they could pull the switch with a dry pike pole, they could shut off the flow of current to the transformer and put out the fire. They radioed their plan to the IC, who promptly rejected it. He pulled everybody out and waited for the utility company. When the firefighters relayed their proposed plan to the arriving utility personnel, they were shocked. They said that if the plan had been attempted, there would have been a huge electrical arc that would have killed everyone in the room. The moral of the story? If you're not dead certain about what you're going to do, don't do it, or you may wind up dead. I hope you have learned something today about ladder company operations. Don't forget the acronym LOVERS U, which stands for laddering, overhaul, ventilation, forcible entry, rescue and search, salvage, and control of utilities. We talked about the need to create a plan of action, like the FDNY's Ladders 4. This plan should be adapted for your use and reflect your staffing and operating environment. We discussed the tools and duties assigned to both the interior and exterior teams. We also talked about laddering and using the right type and length of ladder to get the job done. Don't forget about how versatile extension ladders can be on the fireground by being able to change working height when needed. We then talked about aerial devices and their various abilities, and how proper positioning of the aerial device is vital to achieving any objective, whether it is venting or rescuing trapped victims. We mentioned how the use of TICs can greatly improve your ability to root out and find hidden hotspots. With salvage operations, we described how to mitigate the damage from fireground operations, and that each firefighter should have an attitude of, "This could be my house." Finally, we discussed the control of utilities and the need for two-person teams at all times. We learned about not taking matters into your own hands when you're not sure what is going to happen, since it might get you killed. You may have noticed that we did not cover ventilation, forcible entry, or search as part of LOVERS U. These topics are simply too large to be addressed in this presentation. I'm John Norman. Stay safe.